way. Each year we try to learn things in the Haggadah before Pesach, and each year becomes increasingly difficult. Why? We're more knowledgeable. So either we forget things, so we're reminded of them, or we look for new ideas. We need to look for new ideas and thoughts for consideration about the Haggadah Shal Pesach. And I thought today to present some of those. You may be able to use some of them at your Seder. You may not. Some years I've just done what I would call Vortlach. Here, this, let's go through the Haggadah. And some years I'm trying to talk about some themes and to accentuate themes. This year is the latter. So let's get underway. What does the word Haggadah mean? The word Haggadah in English, you would say, well, it's to tell something. But as we will see, that is itself a bit of a discussion. Obviously, everyone knows the pasuk. I don't have to cite it here. It's in the Haggadah repeatedly. Tell your son on that day, saying, tell your child. But what is Haggadah? Here's a bit of a novel idea, perhaps. From Sefer Vayikra, Perek Hey, V'nefesh ki techata v'sham'a kol Allah v'hu eid o ra'a o yada im lo yagid v'nasa avono. The word Haggadah seems to appear in this pasuk, if he will not say. And it's a strange pasuk. It's a person who has done something wrong, and there's a public hue and cry about it. The word is out there that something has happened. And someone who could have given testimony, translation here courtesy of Sefaria, every translation is interpretation, someone who had something to say, either because they were a witness, they could have testified, they heard about it, they learned about it, who aid, person is a witness, o ra'a o yada, or they saw it, or they know about it. Im lo yagid, if they will not say, v'nasa avono, they will be one to carry a punishment. They incur a punishment for not speaking what they know. So a witness, either a witness who saw or a witness who knows something, has an obligation to tell. And that's what Rav Avram Shor and Alekach V'Alibuv opens his Haggadah with. Tam Kriyat Shem Haggadah. Why is the Haggadah called Haggadah? And he writes, and that's what I have here, the first page. Yesh lever mashnikra Haggadah shal Pesach b'shem Haggadah daika. Why that specifically? Verbei tamim namru b'meshach hador l'dei gidolei Yisrael. V'anu l'dor keinu nomar d'shem Haggadah moreh al mashmaut miyuchedet b'mitzvat sipur tzip Mitzrayim. It is a special meaning within the realm of telling the story. We have a mitzvah called sipur tzip Mitzrayim. The word l'saper does appear in the Torah in Parshat Bo. Ulaman to saper be'oznei vincha uven vincha et esher italalti mitzrayim v'doter samti bam, so that you shall tell into the ears of your son and your grandson that which I have done and made a mockery of Egypt, all the signs that I placed within them. So that's a pasuk. By the by, we call them, it's a sipur tzip Mitzrayim. It's not codified that way. Not in the Gemara, not in the Rambam, not in the Shulchan Aruch. Instead, what do we have? The pasuk we know that I've quoted at the beginning. Tell your son on that day, saying, there's two aspects of this mitzvah: sipur, telling a story, and Haggadah. And here he quotes the pasuk that I put at the top of the page. Well, if he knows and he doesn't say, so that would be worthy of punishment. Vita Basifra, the Medrash Halacha, aka also known as the Torah Kohanim, on Sefer Vayikra. Hishbi alim chamisha pamim chutz lebeitim ubal lifnei beitim v'hodu yachol yu chayavim tamud lomar v'hu eid o ra'a o yada im lo yagir v'nasavuno lo amarti ella, top of the next column, b'makom she'ein magid she'itchayev zeh b'mamono ve'eze zeh beitim. The Sifra essentially says that there are it's an involved issue having to do with Beit Din essentially, but we learn that if the parties will come and they will be involved themselves, so that's one thing. But if there was someone who could have been a witness and there's no one who will come forward and fess up to what's happened, so then the witness has to come forward to give a Haggadah. The Malbim who I'll be discussing with Phil after our Shir, a little meeting together to talk about the Malbim and his Hagada. The Malbim, who lived in the 19th century, which is instructive because he was very interested in certain themes, particularly in Sefer Vayikra. In order to perish on Chumash, he focused very much on Sefer Vayikra with a parallel commentary, not just to the Torah directly, as a Parshan would do, but as a Parshan to the Medrash Halacha. So what is the Medrash Halacha? It's, you could say, the earliest Parshanut on the Mikra. The Medrash Halacha is telling us the halachot within each and every pasuk, organized by the psukim. The Tanaim wrote the Medrash Halacha, and so he has a commentary exploring the nuances of language in the Medrash Halacha in its commentary on the Torah. You follow? So an easier way to say this is he's not like Rashi commenting on the words of the Torah in Sefer Vayikra. He is in many respects commenting on the commentary of Rashi on the Torah. It's not Rashi, it's the commentary of Chazal on the Torah, and it's not just a commentary to understand the words, but a commentary having to do with halacha. And so here, Ravam Shor gives us a quote from the Malbim's commentary on the commentary of the Chachamim on the Chumash, right there. Upirish HaMalbim, together the Hagada. What does the Hagada mean? Hayinu shiagid al anogea badavar. It's someone who is telling something, someone's telling something to someone else that they care about. It has to be something that matters to them, that's relevant for that particular case. He is informing the court about something that otherwise would not be known. So he's a witness in one of two ways: that he saw something or that he learned of something. Either of those could be a witness, could be engaged in Haggadah, and the job of being a Magid, one who is engaged in Haggadah, is to tell us something that otherwise would have been hidden from the people who are in the case, who would have needed to know it, and to tell the Beit Din what that is. Be'zerak bebeitin, shinogea lehem ladata edut ladun al piv. Who needs to know whatever happened in this particular case, whatever the case is? The Beit Din needs to know in order to make an informed decision. And therefore they need an aid, either an eyewitness or a knowledge witness who can come forward to bring them Haggadah. Umatzanu zot, says Ram Shor, mavur b'Zohar HaKadosh. That's also in the Zohar. Va'agid o vayaged o vayagidu v'chein kulhu detanitan raza dechakamta. All of these things, the lashon, having to do with Haggadah in any of its cognates that appear in the Tanakh, they refer to the secret of wisdom. V'akavana de'inin Haggadahu Haggadat davar hane'elam. It's to tell us something that otherwise would be hidden, unknown to the parties who need to know it. Uchmosh ketav Malbim rak shehu zal hosif od prat shetzarich shia nogealo. What did the Malbim add to what the Zohar says? The Malbim added it has to be something that they care about, that's relevant, that's going to relate to something that will inform decision-making for the future. So again, to look at that pasuk, v'nefesh ki techatav sham'a kol Allah v'hu eid o ra'a o yada im lo yagid v'nasa avono. It would be worthy of opprobrium, of punishment, for a person who knows not to say what they know. As Shelley put in here, a question is the relationship between Haggadah and Agadah. Absolutely. They're the same word, essentially. Haggadah, Agadah, same word. Yeah. Haggadah is lahagid, to tell it. Agadah is the telling. They're both very much related, right? So what is going on here in the Lekach Ve'alibuv? He's telling you, you should realize the Haggadah means to tell someone something that is, A, bringing them wisdom they did not know before. They would not have otherwise known, because you're a witness. And there could be two kinds of witnesses. I saw it, I was there when this happened, or I have intricate knowledge of it. O ra'a o yada. Isn't that us at the Seder? And the Malbim added, according to Lekach Ve'alibuv, the person or people we are speaking to, it's relevant for them. They care. Nogea lahem. It's not stam to say things. Ulufizeh, he goes on, we won't read the whole thing here, just one more sentence. Therefore, Haggadah Shel Pesach is not a recitation, but each year to reveal new things that are hidden, things that are new. Until this year, these were hidden things. You didn't even know them. It's a very, very big challenge. These matters need to be relevant to the Bnei Habayit, the people in the household. That's why it's not just the sipur is to tell a story. The higadata is much more the relational dimension. And by the by, the higadata levincha. It's not the higadata stam, but you have to speak it to the people, particularly the next generation, about what this story means. Definition number one: what is Haggadah? It's a form of testimony. Rav Soloveitchik writes this also in one of his essays about Sibit Siyat Mitzrayim. He writes, it's a Haggadat Edut. He uses that language, actually, the language of Haggadat Edut. You're testifying to something. How can you testify? O Ra'ah, O Yada. I think it's a crucial first early element to bring to the Seder. Everybody at the Seder is either an eyewitness to Yetziat Mitzrayim, or they know a lot about Yetziat Mitzrayim. You know why? Because they were an eyewitness to somebody who was an eyewitness. Eid mipi eid. Unbroken chain of Eid mipi eid. Witness from the mouth of a witness. Yeah? And the job is to testify. It's not a beit din, but it's a bayit. Not a beit din, but a bayit, which is adjudicating, okay, what's going to be in the future. The decisions, in quotation marks, are being made by the next generation. So we're going to carry this forward. How could you not tell? And not just to tell, but to say things that are in a certain way revealing information that would not have otherwise been known. Number one. Number two, it has to be something shenogea lahem ladat, something that is relevant for them to know. It's a tall order. That's definition number one, Haggadah. I'll give you a second idea about Haggadah, and it comes from the Psukim. This should be fairly obvious. Also, the Rav alludes to this also in one of his essays about Sibrit Siyat Mitzrayim, the mitzvah Sibrit Mitzrayim. Much of our Haggadah, the core of it, in fact, is centered around explicating and understanding and unpacking various psukim, Arami, Oved, Avi, etc. We'll come to that. Maybe we'll see the psukim today shortly, but right, it's taken from the 26th chapter of Sefer Dvarim, and I thought of all years, this is a pretty important year to talk about this, the 75th year of Medinat Israel, Kain Yirbu. Vayaki tavo el haaretz asher Hashem Elokecha notein lecha nachala v'rishtav yashavta ba. And it shall be when you will come to the land, you will arrive in the land that God, Hashem, your God, gives you as a heritage. You will possess it and dwell within it, settle within it. We know these verses very well. You'll take all the first fruits, right, from your land. You put it in a basket. You go to the place that Hashem will choose to cause His name to dwell therein, namely Yerushalayim. Uvata ela kohen asher yabayim imahem v'amarta elav higadati hayom lashem lokecha kivati el haaretz asher nishba Hashem Elokecha lavotenu latet lanu higadati. The word Haggadah, not accidentally, appears as the preamble to Arami, Ovid, Avi, Ve'er, Mitzrayim, etc. that we're going to darshan later on. It's the word Haggadah. Says the Targum Yerushalmi, V'teite levat kahana diyeheve mimana chohen rav biyomaya ha'inun v'temrun lei. You will go to the kohen who is appointed to be the Kohen Gadol in those days, and you will say to him, what will you say to him? Higadati hayom odinan v'shabachinan yom hadain. I am saying thank you and am giving praise on this day. Kadam Hashem Eloka, before Hashem, who is God. Yeah. Arum aleinan le'ara dekayim l'meimra Hashem of Hatan l'mitan lan. Who on account of the fact that I have arrived to this land, that He has fulfilled His word that He spoke to the forefathers, He'll give to them. You know what Haggadah means? It means to say thank you. It means to praise and thank Hashem. It's a measure of hoda'ah, shevach v'hoda'ah to Hashem. You may hear more about this theme as we get closer to Pesach, but I won't say more now. But he got it to Hagada. I have a story to tell, and it's one of thanksgiving. That's Targum Yerushalmi's interpretation of Higadati. Not just a telling of a testimony, but a telling that is filled with thanksgiving. In those words, by this reading, it's not just a telling, but to show your child, look how much akarda tov we need for Hashem. Look at what we need. We need a sense of thanksgiving and praise of Hashem. Yeah, and that's crucial. Yeah, in order to feel that we're doing what we need to be doing in the telling, not just a dry story, but a story that's relevant, one that's bearing testimony that we are links in that chain, and another layer of meaning that was saying the very words themselves express gratitude. Yeah. But instead of starting to tell when we get to the story, we have the Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. Each of these things could be a shir of themselves. So mostly there aren't too many Divrei Torah. If we're like, okay, let's get rolling with the actual Haggadah. So what do you give me, Divrei Torah and Divrei Torah? When are we going to start? So the beginning of Magid, we say, is Lachma, Anya. Diachala Avatana Ba'ar de Mitzrayim. It's not even in Lashon HaKodesh, in Aramaic, as we know. So just to note that the next thing that happens, I'm going to sort of trace it as a thread in blue here. So the next psukim, you see it in blue, so it connects. He takes the basket and he puts it in front of the Mizbech of Hashem, your God. And you know what you do? Va'anita va'amarta lifnei Hashem Elokecha. Va'anita. You're going to say something. You're going to declare something. You're going to speak something. You're going to respond in some way. What are you responding to? Well, we'll have to understand that. Respond or open a dialogue. Which is it? Not entirely clear. Right? Not entirely clear. You're taking the basket, you put it down, and then you say the following. And I moved the margin in because these are the words that we are going to darshan later on. To darshan, understand the drasha of each of the words, that we're not looking just at Torah shebichtav, but a Torah shebal peh that goes along with it. Where is that? That's later on in the Seder. In a certain way, that's the core element of the Sipur, is to read those psukim about a retelling. We're telling a story about a retelling, as we know very well, and we're understanding each of the psukim based on how Chazal understood them and their interpretive gesture. Yeah. So Vanita of Amarta. How do we start the Seder? Halachma Anya. So of course, in English, this is the poor bread. Lachma Anya, lechem oni, right? What's interesting is that we seem to be far away from the ideal, because the Medrash Tanaim says, Komakom shenamar aniya v'amira kacha v'ko hareze b'lashon hakodesh. When you have aniya v'amira together, and we have here v'anita v'amarta, it should really be in lashon hakodesh, in Hebrew. What do we start to say there? It's not even in English, not even Hebrew. Excuse me, it's in Aramaic, right? It's not even in the right lashon. Rashi thinks on the pasuk va'anita, raise your voice. That's what aniya means. Comes the Malbim, not the one in the Haggadah, which we'll discuss, but the one in the psukim, the bottom of page 2. Va'anita va'amarta, matzinu ki atchalat hadibur nikra b'shem aniya. The beginning of speech is actually called Anya. Example, Kimo Vatan Lahem Miriam. Where's that? When she starts to begin the song at the sea. After Az Yashir, they come out, and it says, Vatan Lahem Miriam. Right? She speaks to them. Sheperusho Sheitchila Miriam. Lomar Lahem Shiru LaHashem. That's what she said. V'chein lahalan. V'anu alavim v'amru. Later on, we're going to see in the Torah, and Sefer Dvarim, the Levium, v'anu v'amru, hu hatchalat dvarim. That's what it means to start. V'anita v'amarta, you're going to start. V'yitachein ki b'makom sheyesh she'elat mazot or atchalat dibur nikra ma'aneh. And it would seem to me that what it means to start speaking is that it is beginning speech, but it's somehow answering a question that is the question of, what is this? What have you done? What has just transpired? Kemo sheyitziat Miriam v'atof biyada v'chol anashim achara muvan sheyitkabtzu le'ezeh inyan. Once it describes in the Torah, Sefer Shmot, that Miriam, after they crossed through the Red Sea, she came out and she's holding the tof. Yeah, so something's going to happen. So they're all after her. It's understood that there's some reason why they got together. What is that reason? So they gave honor to Miriam. She should speak first. Therefore, vatan. But the vatan is there's some thing that happened that is not verbal, but that made it clear that there's a question here. What's this about? I know you have a question because of the action I just took. Therefore, let me respond. I put the basket down. Now, okay, and what does it mean? What does it mean that you put this basket down? Let me open my mouth. V'anita v'amarta. And you say, Arami Ovid Avi. Why did she take the drum out? What's she holding in her hand? Answer, Vatan lehem Miriam. And of course, v'chein, Shinid Kabtzu, Kol Yisrael, Shishi Shvatim Ahari V'Shishal Har Grizim Ve'nem HaYolavim Va'aron. At the end, which describes this in Parshat Kitavo further along, that they're gathering on either side, these two mountains, right? So Ve'anu. So the question is, Muvanshi Kabtzu Le'ezeh Davar, Shemakife Ha'aron Yomru Ma. Yeah, those who are around the what's going to be spoken. And here also, V'chein Kan, says the Malbim, Achar Shemar Higadati, Vasat Nufayim HaKohen, V'nishar Alamdo, Eitz Lakohen V'bikurim Biado, Muvan Sheyesh Lo Adayin Od Malomar. Now that he picked up the basket, he waved it around, and he said, he got it to you, and I'm so thankful, and he put it down. So it's obvious, though, there's something else that he has to say. Zeshamar Ve'anita Ve'amarta. Yeah. So therefore, what are we doing? We're actually holding the matzah and we're waving it. So Lachma Anya, because we just broke it, because we're sitting at the Seder. There already been a number of nonverbal cues. Kiddush was normal. We have that all the time. Urchatz was already a nonverbal thing. It's a question. Karpas, a question. Yachatz, a question. Three actions. Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. So now how does Magid start? Halachma Anya. Now you'll say to me, yeah, okay, but Lachma Anya means lechem oni, the bread of poverty, of affliction. But when you look at the Gemara, you find that the Gemara gives us three interpretations. It's really two interpretations, I would say, 2A and 2B. So number one, here's the Gemara in Psachim. Amar Shmuel, what is lechem oni? Lechem she'onina lav dvarim. It's the bread upon which we say many things. We articulate words. She'onin alav makes it sound like it's a response to something. You know what it's a response to? It's presence. What's it doing here? Right? To wit, manishtana, halayla hazeh. So shlechem she'onin la dvarim. Lachma anya could very easily be understood as the words lechem oni in the Torah can very easily be understood as Shmuel did, something that involves speaking about it. There's a braita that supports what Shmuel says. Devar acher, just like in our Chumash classes, we're learning Chumash together in Rashi. Devar acher lechem oni, right, is written like ani ktiv. Ma ani shedak b'prusa, afkan b'prusa. Just as the ani, his way is with a broken piece of matzah, so too we break it, we have a piece of it. That's number two. Davar acher, another view. Ma darko shel ani hu meisik v'ishto ofa, af kanami hu meisik v'ishto ofa. This one's a bit drushy in my view. I mean, literally it means the way of a poor person is that the husband makes the fire, the wife bakes the bread. Differentiated roles in order to make rolls, in order to make bread. But I'm taking from this, and you could call it drush if you like, but sure, why not? It takes more than one person to make the product. There's a certain unspoken dialogue in making the matzah. More than one person. We don't do it this way today. It's interesting. No paskin like this, so to speak. But there is a mitzvah of a fiat matzah. A few years ago, it was the Shabbos Hagada drasha about machine matzah and handmade matzah and who makes the matzah, etc. It's largely, in many cases, fallen out of favor. We don't bake our own matzah. It's very, very, I would say, risky, complicated, etc. It's another discussion another time. So Okay, a lot of risky things. We do them anyway. It's Judaism. So halachically risky, I mean. I don't mean the safety risky, but halachically risky. But the point here is option number one, halachma Anya is milashon va'anita, speaking. And number two, that has to do with being the bread of affliction. Both of those things are true. And the idea that they're taken from the same pasuk in Va'anita V'amarta, and that it does, according to the Malbim, have something to do with responding to something. What are you responding to? A nonverbal action that you took that begged the question, why did this happen? What were you setting the stage for? So we open with, it's going to be coming to Arami Ovid Avi. Our preamble seems to be pretty far away from where we used to be. According to the Torah, and according to what we'll do later in the Seder, Arami Ovid Avi should be, according to Medrash Tanayim, in Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew. Yeah, to read the psukim, to understand the psukim, not just to tell the story in our own words. That's also very important, the personalization, etc. But at its core, the invocation of Lashon HaKodesh. We saw in the Medrash Tanaim, right? Back on page 2. And Va'anita, speaking it out loud, not just thinking it, but verbalizing it as a response to something, says the Malbim. What? To the cue that something has happened that set the stage for the need for a response. Lachma Anya, I want to argue, could be read as, we usually translate all the translations, which is always an interpretation. This is the bread of affliction. But isn't also Lachma Anya, the Achalo Avatana, is the Aramaic translation. Lachma Anya is Lechem Oni. Amar Shmuel, Lechem She'onin Alav, Dvarim Harbe. Says the Rashbatz in his Hagada, Lefi Sha'ata Mazgulo Kos Sheni, Okrin Ashulkan V'tinokot Omrin Mi Achlinan de Magbehito Petora. Right? And now that the second cup was poured, and it's actually an instruction, another nonverbal instruction. This one doesn't get into the song. Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Akirat HaShulchan, Magid, but it really is. Akirat HaShulchan is meant to be there. In my family, it became very scripted. Oh, this is the part where Abba's going to move the Seder plate off of the table. In the olden days, they didn't have a table. Everyone had their own table. So you had your own table, picked it up, and you just moved it out. And the children would ask, did we already eat, such that you're already picking up the table? We don't do the table now. We do the Seder plate. It'd be kind of unwieldy to try to pick up an entire table. Yeah. And they'll ask, Manishtana halaya zemi kol ailot. Now, anu makdimin lo hakdama shezeh zeich le'tziat Mitzrayim. We put in a hakdama, an introduction, that what we're doing is something that is related to coming out of Egypt. Umedabrim lo belashan shehurgulu bo v'hulashan aramit sheimedabrim bo bebavel. And we speak in a language that is the lingua franca of the Jewish people, that was spoken. The Jewish people went already to Bavel. That's Aramaic. Share matzina b'sefer Daniel ve'Ezra. As is already, you see, we learned it together, many of us on this call. Sefer Daniel, part of it's in Aramaic. Ezra, part of it's in Aramaic. Why? Because that's already the language of Galut, but the people are living in Galut. Al kain ba piskazu harishona sheba Hagada b'lashon Aramit yoter mikol Hagada. You know why? Therefore, the first thing that we're going to do in the Haggadah is going to be in Aramaic more than the rest of the Haggadah. You know why? K'dei sheyavin hatinok. Yeah? So that the child will understand, because the child may not know Lashon HaKodesh, because the child may not know Lashon HaKodesh. Ve'ein b'chol zot hapiska Lashon HaKodesh ki im hashana haba b'nei chorin. The words hashana haba b'nei chorin ki kol Lashon hatinok le'olam l'shana haba b'Yerushalayim b'nei chorin. Yeah? Even the children, even the people who don't speak Hebrew know that you say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. That they know. That's what's in there. L'shana haba, they know. Oh, the next year. L'shana haba b'nei chorin, l'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. They remember that. What's the Rashbatz saying here? Really, the Haggadah is meant to be in Lashon HaKodesh. But there's a tension. The tension is that the Haggadah needs to be something that relates to the people who are sitting there. We need to have a standard. We need a Lashon HaKodesh. Arami, Oved, Avi, Vayered, Mitzrayim, Vayagar, Shami, Matein, Ma'at, etc., etc. We need that at its core. But we have to keep shifting between that and the reality of who's before us. Haggadah, from the Malbim that was quoted by I'm sure, that relates to the people. It's revealing something new to them, that we're doing something that's going to engage them. And maybe the boilerplate, we're already getting the first Anya, the first Va'anita V'amarta, the first response to the nonverbal cues that we had. Again, Kadesh, it's the same with Kiddush, doesn't look different than the other Kiddush that you make the rest of the year. It's not, the words are not different. It's the same Lashonot that you have on Shavuot and Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It's the same. I mean, Yom Kippur may not make Kiddush, hopefully. But Rosh Hashanah, you're making Kiddush. Yeah, okay, the syntax is a little different. It's tailor-made for the day, but we didn't add a whole different section. Yeah, what do we do when we come to the table on Friday night or the night of Yom Tov? Kiddush Hamotzi, so this Kiddush. But then, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Akira Shulchan, Va'anita V'amarta. But you don't respond first to Arami Ovid Avi, because you remember, but these kids here in Golis, maybe we've got to talk to them in their language. Ha Lachma Anya. This is the bread upon which many things are said. Yeah.
Then why won't we say it in Aramaic? The kids would be more likely to know Hebrew.
Yeah. Okay. So Faith is asking a good question. Why are you going to say it in Aramaic? Why don't you just say it in Hebrew then? Or in English? So the answer is, I think it's reminding us that you should say it also in English. Why in Aramaic? It's the same thing as, well, I don't want to say the same thing as, because then we're going to get off topic to a whole different discussion. When you see Aramaic somewhere, you remember that it is the archetypal language of exile. It's not the only language of exile, but where it appears, since it was the first language of exile of the Jewish people, it's the language that when we want to signal this is something that happens in exile, is applies in exile, is relevant in exile, all these different things, we say what? Oh, it's in Aramaic. I would say, hearing the language of Aramaic, which to us, most of us, I would argue, pretty foreign, but remember, but this was the first language after Hebrew. It actually has a certain status. Think about Yom Kippur, think about Brit Shmei, obviously think about Kaddish. I don't want to go off topic too much, but there's a reason why it's in the archetypal language of Galut. It's a lower language. It's closer to us, so to speak, when we're away from Eretz Yisrael, when we're away from our moorings, from our way of being. And what do we also learn when we read Aramaic? What I learned personally, to me, Aramaic is entirely a dead language. This year, if it was given on Zoom in 1850 something, I guess, this wouldn't be relevant, but we're many years after that, so I can say it plain. Aramaic remains, for Jews, a dead language. When we see it, we remind ourselves how many languages did Klal Yisrael have in exile that today are dead. Without the translation of Rabbi Yehuda ibn Tibbon and the translation of Rabbi Yosef Kapach, we would not know the words of various things that the Rambam wrote, because they were all translated from Arabic, which was the lingua franca of the Jews in Sfarad. Ladino didn't exactly take off. But Arabic, everybody spoke Arabic. What's the guide written in? Arabic. Right? Various Sfarim, not just the guide, and cite that one as one example among many. The Chovot HaLevavot of Rabbeinu Bach Ibn Pakuda, a foundational work. It was not written in Hebrew. It wrote in Arabic. So I have to translate. How many are the dead languages of the Jewish people? Obviously, now we say, well, English will never go that way. Well, obviously not. Well, they said that about Greek for several hundred years. Don't you worry. So what's coming next? Lo yodea. Maybe we'll be speaking in zeros and ones, of the computer systems. I have no idea. But there's something here about language that I'm trying to press upon. I want to share with you one last point about this. And so just to come back to the Rashbats, what is the Rashbats saying here? He's saying that this is the language that was spoken in Bavel. It's the language in Sefer Ezra and Daniel. It's the language of exile. We start with that because that's what the kids at the beginning of our exile, that's the language they knew. And we have other languages now that we speak. But to Faith's point, of course, vital, you need to say these things in English. I don't think it's instead, by the way. I think it's still value to saying the Hagada. But if you haven't explained it to the people who are there, to word process and just blah, 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 let's eat, to what avail? Yeah. It doesn't seem to be the point. And therefore we start the first response, the verbal cue, nonverbal things that we did. I just cited 4 of them again and again. Yeah. And what do we have here? We have already the questions of Manishtana before they're even asked, like what's going on? What is this? Okay. Lachma Anya. This is the bread upon which we will be saying many things. Last point, and it is speculative, but I'm going to say it anyway because I think it's interesting. And this is totally al derech drush, but based on everything that I've said till now, lachma anya. This is the bread upon which we'll say many things, and this is the bread of poverty, of affliction. Ma darko shel ani beprusa. By the way, oni really means more oppression, and ani means a poor person. You know who a poor person is? I want to argue. A person who doesn't even know Lashon HaKodesh, and therefore have to make recourse to other languages to understand, to translate their Jewish tradition into their language. This is totally Jewish. But now the halachma anya, this is the bread that I'm holding up, and I'm speaking to you in Aramaic at the beginning of the Seder to articulate these 2 things. Maybe if you're sitting in Eretz, everybody speaks Hebrew, you'll say, well, that doesn't really apply to us. That's cute drush. But my point is that the symbolism of the lechem oni is both that we're going to speak about it, and the fact that we have to speak about it in a foreign language is itself a mark of our poverty. Now, one more second, Helen. Now hear this. Millions of people will sit down at their Seder, and to them, they're reading halach ma'anya. Ani lo mevin mazeh. Ani lo medaber aramit. But Ivrit, Lashon HaKodesh, that's now my lingua franca. Millions of people who speak Lashon HaKodesh. And that's a great moment that we're in. That's part of the higadati of Odina v'Shabchinan. We thank Hashem, we give praise to Hashem. Klal Yisrael, thanks to some fascinating shlichim, right? Religiously, we're pretty far away, but they understood that there's some kedusha in the language. Even if you ask them, they would say, kedusha? No, we just wanted our own language. But we understand that what they must mean is there's a certain kedusha in Lashon HaKodesh. And something for us to consider. And we're going back and forth. The reality of Basher Haim Sham, who are these people at my Seder? And the reality that, but we have some aspiration even in the language that we're using. V'anita, v'amarta. Should be in Lashon HaKodesh. Can't be? Halachma anya. Say it in the language that people understand. What could we do? If we could be there, we could get there. We're going to have some aspects. It's going to be, you'll just hear the lilt of the Lashon HaKodesh as it's being read by the Baal HaMagid, and we'll say some of the words along with them. Yeah. Okay. Ellen, go ahead, please. Sorry.
Okay. Targum Onkelos is a refreshing. Very often, we're challenged in understanding a word, and we put our view to the left and look at the word as it's said in Targum Onkelos.
Right.
Right. And we get another fresh look at the multifaceted meaning of the word.
Right. I'm not suggesting that's not a bad thing. I know what you're saying. You're correct. I'm just pointing out that and that's by the by, Onkelos is considered from a spiritual perspective on a very high level as a commentator. The Gemara in Megillah and Daf Gimel refers to Onkelos, that Onkelos Hager received it from Tanaim, that the Tanaim taught him this Aramaic tradition that they got through the generations, we say, from the Nevi'im, that it comes down some kind of a Masorah. Rashi, by contrast, Rabban Shal Yisrael, Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzchaki, as we learn on Mondays in our Chumash class, is mostly quoting the words of Chazal. He's not giving you a linear translation. Onkelos is supposed to be a linear translation, which every translation is an interpretation, but it's considered incredibly authoritative, more so even than Targum Yerushalmi. I'm not arguing on that point. I'm just saying the archetypal language of exile equals the language of Aramit, Milashon Aram, the Arameans. And it reminds you that when you think, oh, this is Aramaic spoken by the Arameans, you understand, now to scroll back up to the next point, why we say Arami Oved Avi. An Aramean tried to destroy my father. One of the interpretations. Arami Oved Avi. Arami, the Aramean who tried to join my father. Who's my father? Who went down to Egypt, who lived there briefly. One of the interpretations is Yaakov Avinu. Who was the Aramean? Lavan. Who's the first person to introduce Aramaic into a conversation with the Jewish people? Lavan. When did he do it? Parshat Vayetze at the end. Yigar Sahaduta. He called the place Yigar Sahaduta, and the Jewish people who were there, Yaakov called it Gal Eid. So Arami Oved Avi. V'anita v'amarta Arami Oved Avi. So we don't say the Arami Oved Avi right there in the Haggadah, but instead, what do we say in the language of the Aramean? Ha Lachma Anya. The very fact that we have to express it in Aramaic, the language of exile, is right there part of the Genut. Matchil begenut, we start with denigration, we end with praise. And it explains why, another layer of why we didn't just start with a little instruction. Please say in Yiddish or Ladino or Arabic or Greek or English the following sentences. Explain to the children what these other steps are that we just did. Urchatz, karpas, yachatz, akirat shulchan. No, say the words in the language of the Aramean. You know what an impression the Aramean had on us? It's our second language. The Jewish people are automatically bilingual. Hebrew, Aramaic. And the first point in the Torah where it makes its inroads is the Arami Oved Avi. We still didn't get out of it. Right? Now, what happens in many Seders? Not really in my Seder personally, but I'm very well aware of this. Who says the Manishtana? The child. But you know, in some families, they don't say the Manishtana. They say the Fir Kashis. And the Fir Kashis should be spoken in another language of exile. Worthy of consideration. That's sociologically, that's how it grew up. Again, because that tension, we want to have the Lashon HaKodesh, we want everyone to understand. If they don't get the Lashon HaKodesh, then the Hebrew language, which in Chazal is not really called Ivrit, called Lashon HaKodesh, so the holy language, we can't do that. What do we got? Let's go with Yiddish. Among Hasidim, they very, very strong on the idea that it's crucial to continue to speak Yiddish. After all, Yiddish is Jewish. Yeah. So somewhat tongue-in-cheek, Rabbi Aaron Rakefet, I think it was tongue-in-cheek, Rabbi Aaron Rakefet, Shalita from Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh, is one of my teachers. He said that in 1959, Torah was destroyed in America. And he mentioned the name of the person. I won't mention the name of the person. He did mention the name of the person, remember, in this year. I'll tell you who ruined Torah in America. So everyone in the show was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean ruined Torah in America? So he said there was a fellow in the shir of Maran Harav Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik in 1959, who at the end of shir went over to the Rav and he said to the Rav in Yiddish, Rabbi, most of the Talmidim here don't speak Yiddish. Could you please start to give the shir in English? And the Rav responded something to the effect of, I'll think about it. And so goes the story from Rabbi Rakefet. He was there. He says the next day the Rav came in, and from that day forward, the shir was in English. So Rakefet, I still remember, he was railing. He ruined Torah in America. We were like, but none of us speak Yiddish either. We were all sitting with him in Gross College, but none of us speak Yiddish either. He says, yeah, but he said something to the effect of like, do you understand what was lost? That we didn't have a language that was the language of the Jewish people anymore. We're speaking the same language as every other American. Okay. I'm not suggesting I'm about to switch to Yiddish because I have to learn Yiddish in order to do that. And I'm probably not going to switch to Hebrew at this moment. But in my mind's eye, I think, wow, what's going on in Eretz Yisrael? Even the farthest away Jew speaks the Lashon HaKodesh and is going to go to the Seder. We need to look for those positive things. Next comes a study in contrasts. But here is what is our focus? Man nishtana. How different is this night than the other nights? Contrast A, B, C, D. There's 4 different things. Says the Minchat Asher Vasher Weiss in Yanim Rabim Belel Yesh Belel HaSeder. There's so many things that didn't make it into these 4 questions. What did you pick these 4 things? There's so many things. They all have the same question standing behind them. one root. The question is, Man rotzim liskor b'layla zeh, avdut or cherut. He thinks that the question standing behind all four of these is, what is this night about? Slavery or freedom? Is it a night of remembering suffering? Is it a commemoration and a memorial, or is it a great celebration? Shibud or geula michad, right? So shibud or geula, is it subjugation or freedom? Michad ochlim mesubim kederach malachim uvenei chorim. We're leaning, that's freedom. We're eating mar, that's suffering, that's bitterness. Lechem onihu, halachma anya. Right? What's the matzah? It's better poverty. We just said it. We didn't have food. On the other hand, it's we're being redeemed and we didn't have time because God appeared and he revealed himself and he took us out. We're dipping things in the charoset. Michad nechlu b'charoset im zeichel adam olatit. There's a machloket if the charoset itself is in memory of the blood of the Jewish people or of the mortar that was used in the building. So we put red wine in it, we mix it in, right? Zeichel avdut. That's to remind us of slavery. And we do chatibu derech malchut v'cheru. Dipping is a sign of grandeur, of wealth. Val she'ela zuba tshuva. And so from this question, this essential question of which all of these are contrasts, and we're asking, so what's the focus? We follow the dictum of Chazal, the obligation. Chazal gives us a dictum, it's like a nice idea. We need to start with denigration and end with praise. Start with the low and end with the high. From avdut to cherut, from afela or gadol. Mitzuvina anu lahazkir to avdut kidei lohodot ulalala cherut. We need to mention the avdut in order to be able to give thanks and praise on the freedom. Kinafalti kamti, says the Sefer Micha. When I fell down, I arose. Ki eshev bachoshech, for when I sat in darkness, Hashem or li, God is my light. When I sit in darkness, Hashem is my light. I need to say there was darkness in order to get to the light. There needs to be a vayi erev to get to a vayi voker. Yeah. And what's fascinating, and the reason I put this here is not just stam a vort, but the Minchadash are also pointing out that even in the Manishtana, we're still going back and forth about this duality. Which is it? Is it this? Is it that? And we need both of these elements. We're acknowledging the poverty. We're acknowledging I'm retrojecting it. We're acknowledging the poverty of our language. Halachma, Anya, va'anita, va'amarta should be in Lashon HaKodesh. We have to do it in this other language. And yet we're going to speak in a way that the advantage will be to be closer. It'll relate to people. And Lishana Haba, Yerushalayim. Did you notice that in Halachma Anya, to the end of it, it switches to Lashon HaKodesh. Hashta Hacha, Lashana Haba, the Ara, the Yisrael. Hashta Avdei, Lashana Haba, B'nei Chorin, right? Etc. So that people know that Lashana Haba, there's a little Hebrew that's being mixed in to already give us a glimmer of the future. Because every kid, says the Malvi, everybody knows Lashana Haba Yerushalayim. So they know what Lashana Haba means. We're looking forward to something. Now we're here, but there's a better future ahead. We'll get back to our Lashon HaKodesh. We'll get back to. We need to contrast it first by showing the Genut. I'm arguing the Halach Ma'anya's language is itself an aspect of that Genut. Lechem Oni, Lechem Ani. Lechem She'onin Olav Dvarim Harbe, B'tzura Shel Aniyut, in the form that is an impoverished form, not in our language. Okay. Next phase, next page. Page 4. Okay, everyone with me?
Rabbi,
Helen, go ahead, please.
Okay, when we appreciate a foreign language, there's a reason. Like on our dollar bill, it says Semper Fidelis and E Pluribus Unum. So throughout the Torah, with Tzofnas Paneach, Esther, Mordechai, Dinat, Nisan HaMelech, many times we have an insertion of a foreign language. The reason is the pressure of the atmosphere that is impinging on us at that time is something that we have to acknowledge.
Beautiful.
What is the historical pressure at that moment.
And to your exact point, all the people you mentioned are all people who live in exile. Yosef, Esther,
Yeah.
Mordechai, right? And therefore, there is suddenly a lot more foreign language insertion even into the Tanakh.
I look at Esther, Zoroastrian. It's a religion of stargazing. And why are we doing this?
We're under pressure. We're under pressure. We're
pressure.
resisting assimilation. We're under pressure, but we see that there is a toll that's taken.
Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And we still we're using that language because there's an element of exile, right? That's what it is. So after we finish with the Manishtana, we get to the answer. One little paragraph. I gave it to you here there's a green line over here at the top, hints in the first answer. It's a synopsis. That's an Altneu challenge. I put Altneu there because it means old new, because it's an old challenge, which is really a new challenge because every year we got to get back to it. Also because Altneu should remind us of a book written by a certain Zionist who did not speak a word of Hebrew. Altneu Land was the first book, a fictitious work, a utopian work. I've not read it. I've read only little synopses of it, written by Theodor Herzl about a vision for the future. Altneu Land. And when we understand that, we realize, oh yeah, and the rabbi's not putting hints in his little subtitles over here about something about language and about the reality of exile and of what it means. But to our point here, in this paragraph, we probably know it by heart. Starts off Avadim, Hayinu, Avadim, Mitzrayim. By the end of it, we're saying, and even if we're so wise, even if we're so smart, even if we know everything, we know the whole Torah, it's still a mitzvah for us to be Mesaper, Mitzrayim, and anyone who does that, Harezim Meshubach, is praiseworthy. So that's the old new challenge. We're articulating that every year. We gotta think. Okay, the smarter I am, the more wise I am, the harder it's going to be for me to find something. But I got to find. So that's the mitzvah. I got to plumb the depths for me to internalize it, not just to say the old things, but to yeah. So it starts. Avadim Hayinu l'far Mitzrayim b'tzinu Shem l'kinu misham b'yad chazaka v'izrei netuya v'ilhotze Kadosh Baruch Hu et avotenu Mitzrayim anu v'nenu v'nei v'nenu m'shabanim Hayinu l'far Mitzrayim. So we were slaves to Paro in Egypt. Hashem took us out of there with a strong hand. I gave it to you in blue because those words are verbatim. A pasuk. We've seen this pasuk before. A pasuk in Sefer Dvarim. As a response, as an answer. And I gave it to you here in purple. When your son will ask you on the morrow, not literally tomorrow, but in the future, asking, what are the edicts, the testimonies, the edicts, the statutes, which Hashem, your God, commands you to do? I want to know. Who asked that question? We know who asked that question. It's the Ben HaChacham. He hasn't asked this question yet, but apparently it was assumed that whoever is sitting at our Seder, before we're going to articulate and realize that there are different people, that we're going to give the answer. What do you say to your child? To your son, Avadim Hayinu l'far Mitzrayim b'tzinu Shem l'kinu Mitzrayim b'yad chazaka. Yeah, they have almost the same language. Avadim l'far Mitzrayim b'tzinu Shem l'kinu Mitzrayim b'yad chazaka. Right. So God took us out from Egypt. Right. He brought us out of Mitzrayim. You're giving the answer to the some variation of the answer to the Ben HaChacham, that he should realize we're going to give him a detailed answer now. The whole Seder is going to be that detailed answer. The Eidot, the Chukim, and the Mishpatim, they're going to come up throughout the Seder. So it's the title track, the first thing that we're articulating. In the Ritvaz Hagada, he notes, as we should note, that this is the beginning of the Haggadah right here, because now we're giving the answer to the Manishtana, because we were slaves to Paro in Egypt, right? And this is Matchil beginning of Tzayim B'Shvach. In one sentence, we were slaves to Paro in Egypt, in Mitzrayim. Hashem took us out of there with a strong hand and outstretched arm, etc. That's Matchil beginning of Tzayim B'Shvach. We're done. And he reminds us, as we well know, that this is show Adal Shemit Barach Asher Me'ashpot Yarim Avion. He took us out from the trash heap, from the garbage. He took us out. V'nachleku Amorai. My genut. What's the genut? Rav thinks it's mitchila of the avodah zarah coming later. We were idolaters. Now we're close to Hashem. Rava says Avadim lefaro. V'ifseka hilchil akavate de Rava hu batra. He's the last. He comes later. So halach kebatra. We follow the later psak, and that's what he says, and therefore that's what we do. Yeah. Okay. And all right. I'm skipping because I just looked at the clock. So I just realized we don't have so much time. Next paragraph. Vilo hotzi. If God had not taken us out. Yesh makshim, that those who ask the question, how could you possibly say that that's true? That if God had not taken us out, then us and our children would be slaves to power in Egypt. What about there's an oath that God took? Shaharei kvar nishba, Hashem yitbarach, la'avram be'ena b'torim, sheyotzienu b'sof hazman, uvelot tnai haita. The clock's going to run out. There's no condition. V'nira would seem to kach perusho. This seems to be the interpretation, says the Ritva. Had it not been for the promise and the oath that Hashem had taken, the truth is, we were not really worthy of getting out of Mitzrayim. We had sunken very, very far in. We emulated the Egyptians in so many ways. Had it kept going, we'd have been completely mixed in with them and assimilated completely. Then we would be subjugated to them, would have disappeared. Therefore, therefore we have to feel that we ourselves were taken out of that, but not in a way that we had any merit, that we were deserving of it, except for one thing, that there was a promise. As we say further along, V'chol dor vador, we're going to say, Chayav Adam lirot. Lefichach, therefore, Tzivanu Aborei l'saper b'chol dor vador neizeh. Therefore, we have a mitzvah that we have to tell the story each and every generation. And the part of the nace is we weren't even deserving of it. Yeah, because if I earned it partly, I'm a partner with Hashem in getting out of Mitzrayim. So thank you for your part in helping Hashem, but I did earn part of this. The Ritva says none of that. That's the point. If Hashem had not done it, we would not have gotten out. And that adds to our sense of joy and our thanksgiving. Hagada, v'odinan v'shabechinan. Because I know the story, because I know how I got out. Yeah. When we do the Arami Oved Avi part, Arami Oved Avi over here, yeah, so we're telling the story back. That's back all the way up, back on page 2. That's in blue. I messed up my own color coding, so shame on me, but I'm still learning on the job. This should be in the color coding of blue. On the bottom of page 4, it's a continuation of the Arami Oved Avi piece. Oh no, it's not. Oh, I take that back. No, I made a mistake twice. Sorry. It's something else I wanted to say here, which is we were not deserving. Oh, this is the answer. I'm sorry. This is the answer to Ben Chacham. You say to your child, toward the top, page 4 in purple, and we learn here, right, that the answer we give to the Ben Chacham, the extended answer, which is not spoken at the Seder, but it seems to be implied, is that he took us out of Egypt. V'otanu hotzi misham. See those words? He took us out of there. Misham, from the beginning. Misham. Misham. Leman havi otanu latet lanu ha'aretz shenishba l'avotenu. He brought us in. Why did he take us out? For the future, to bring us to the land that he promised to our forefathers. As the Ritva is saying, we didn't deserve really to get out. It's not clear that we deserve getting to the land either, but there was a promise to our forefathers. That's why we're there. And when we arrived there, this is what we're saying to the child. Vayitzvenu Hashem lasot et kol hachukim ha'ela liyirad Hashem Elokeinu l'tov lanu kol hayam l'chayotenu k'mezeh utzdaka. The word tzedaka here means a zechut. Utzdaka tiyalanu kinishmor lasot et kol mitzvah azor lifnei Hashem Elokeinu kasher tzivanu. We got out to do mitzvahs. At the Seder, what's our mitzvah? Sipur Tziyat Mitzrayim. Achilat matzah, moror. One day, Korban Pesach. So Shem took us out of Mitzrayim. Had he not done that, we would not have been worthy of getting out on our own. And therefore, we're putting it all on Hashem, and that just adds, redoubles in our Hagada, our Simcha, and our Hoda'ah of how unworthy we are. And our reality that we're thinking very much about the notion that we got out for a purpose moving forward to the future. What's that purpose? To go to Eretz Yisrael, to keep the mitzvot. We don't keep the Eretz Yisrael part, doesn't play heavily because the Seder is about the Yetziat Mitzrayim, not the Biyat Haaretz. But interesting. Mashiach Tzidkenu will arrive. How will the Haggadah have things added to it? Not sure. We'll find out. I did do it correctly. I'm sorry. Top of page 5. I'm not sure I'm going to have time to do this now. I'm just looking for 10:36. You have to leave?
Yeah, something came up.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So we'll have to meet we'll meet later.
Whatever
Okay.
we can-
Fine. Okay, no problem. Sorry. Okay. All right. So you know what? I think I'm gonna stop here because I'm noticing it's already after the time, and I have enough to say next. We'll go on and on. Yeah, well, we'll start next time at the top of page 5. And when we start next week, now you got to come back because you got to see how it ends. We'll pick up at the top of page 5. Okay, that's all we have time for today. I'll say goodbye. I look forward to connecting with everyone. Next Thursday, we will have a shiur, but I haven't figured out yet if that's I think next Thursday is going to have to be the practical Pesach review, if I'm not mistaken. And the following week will be the end of this shiur. Okay, Ad Khan for today. Have a great day, everybody. Monday, there is a shiur again. Look forward to seeing you.